that, some wonderful questions have come in about aspects of the services that we've been offering, which are a little unusual, a little different from what would ordinarily be offered here at Christ Church. I've spoken about some of these things in earlier videos, but I haven't done one recently, and I thought I might take this opportunity to answer some of those questions. So the first one is a question about vestments, what I'm wearing for these services. Again, because we don't ordinarily offer morning prayer as our principal Sunday service, these aren't vestments that many people would ordinarily see, but about 50 years ago, and even maybe not even that long ago, these were the ordinary vestments for the Episcopal Church, because morning prayer would have been the ordinary service for the Episcopal Church. So I'm wearing a surplice, which is a big white, almost like a big long nightgown sort of a thing. It's related to the alb that we're used to seeing underneath the stole and chasuble, right, with the Eucharistic vestments. But whereas the alb is a very close-fitting garment, the surplice is a little more flowy, has a little more space to it. I understand that's because it was designed to be easily taken off and put on, especially in a monastic setting where you're going into the church several times throughout the day, 8 times throughout the day traditionally, and it makes it easier to have just one white garment you can throw on and take off again on top of your ordinary monastic vestments or clothes that you're wearing through the day, not vestments. Your habit, that's the word I was looking for. The alb was a little bit cumbersome because it has a girdle and everything else. This you can just kind of pop into and pop out of again. So that's the white garment I have on. And then on top of that, I've got, as you can see, my hood and my tippet. These two garments go together, the hood and the black scarf, or as we call it in the church, the tippet, are obviously, if you are familiar with academic regalia, you recognize the hood. It's something that descends to us from the ordinary wear of the Middle Ages. Everyone at one point would have had a hood, and it would have had a practical purpose. A true, old medieval hood is something that you could technically, properly pull up and put over your head to keep you warm. So in the days when people wore them ordinarily, they were very useful, especially in cold, drafty churches and cold, drafty libraries. And so we have their continued use in the church and in universities. And hoods today are codified by some body or other to represent and tell different things by their color, by their shape, and by their length. So my hood has red velvet trim to indicate that I have a degree in divinity. Red, the scarlet, I suppose, technically is the color of divinity. It has a blue interior lining because I earned my divinity degree at Yale Divinity School in New Haven, Connecticut. And it's, I think, 3 feet long is the length of a master's hood. So I have a master of divinity. So the length would change, the lining color would change, and the outer color would change depending on the degree, the university, and the area, the area of study in which the degree was earned. And on top of that, I have this tippet, which, as I understand it, had some descent from another element of the hood that could kind of be wrapped around as like a turban on top of your head. It gets very confusing to me. I've read about it in the past and I don't quite understand it. But the effect now is that the tippet indicates that I am ordained. So if I had someone here helping me, socially distanced, for these services, and that person had a degree, he or she could wear that hood for part of the service. So sometimes if you go to evensong, for example, at a parish church or a great cathedral, you may notice that many members of the choir would wear their hoods, because they're entitled to do that. If the priest is wearing his or her hood, then so too could a singer. But the tippet is an indication of ordination. It's not a stole, but it kind of looks like a stole. It has a similar feature of being a long scarf draped around the neck. And I've talked in the past, of course, about the bands, which are another element of clerical wear that are present both in university settings and in some countries in legal settings, and then also, of course, here in the church. So that's something about the vesture that I'm using for these services. This is the ordinary vesture intended for the daily office, for morning and evening prayer. When I say them at home, I obviously don't get dressed in my vestments. When I say them in the chapel, even with a small congregation, I don't ordinarily wear these vestments, though I could, and some sources would argue that I should. But it makes it simpler just to go in, say morning and evening prayer, and go home again in your ordinary clothes. But for these Sunday services offered here in the church, it's fitting and appropriate to have some additional dignity to what we're doing, and that's what these vestments do. So that's the first question was about why I'm wearing this odd combination of things, and I keep flashing my little cape here at you all and all that. That's, as I said, the first question. The second question that has come to me a couple of times is, what in the world is a canticle? You'll notice that during morning prayer and evening prayer, we say canticles, one after each of the readings, each of the two readings that we have. The typical canticles, the traditional canticles for morning prayer, are the Benedictus Dominus Deus, the song of Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist, the great hymn that he sang out when John the Baptist was born, and the Te Deum Laudamus, the great hymn of praise to God. We praise thee, O God, we acknowledge thee to be the Lord. As you can tell, one of those texts, the first one I mentioned, the Song of Zechariah, is a biblical text. It's taken from the Gospel of St. Luke. The Te Deum is a text that was not recorded in Scripture, but that incorporates many elements and some of the language of Scripture to sing the praises of God. It's a hymn that has a long and ancient and honored history in the church as a hymn of praise. And that's really what the canticles are. You can hear in that word canticle, the Latin root is to sing, right? Canticum novum, let us sing to the Lord a new song. We have this word canticle is a hymn of praise. It is an opportunity to sing out our praises to God, or in the case of these services, to speak our praises to God by repeating these canticles. So they're often taken from Scripture. At evening prayer, we use the canticles, the Magnificat, which is Mary's song of praise and rejoicing of how God has put down the mighty from their seat and has exalted the humble and meek. We use also the song of, not of Zechariah, but of Simeon, the aged Simeon, who when he saw Jesus in the temple, took him in his arms and sang out, Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace. We take these texts, these songs and hymns from Scripture, and we make them our own. And we make them a commentary on the lessons of the day and on the seasons of the church year. We use these hymns over and over and over again and kind of let them sink down into our bones so that they become our hymns and our songs of praise to God, even though in their original context they might have meant something different in Holy Scripture. So these hymns and canticles have been set by many amazing composers down through the centuries. There are incredible complete services that use the hymns and canticles and that are intended to sort of musically reflect one another. You can listen to some of those online, and I hope you will look them up. But that just is a quick answer to that question of what are these canticles. They are a hymn of praise to God, either taken from Scripture or from the tradition of the church, and they are offered sort of in response to the readings that we read in the course of the daily office of morning and evening prayer. So those are two questions that came in recently and that I wanted to go ahead and take a moment to address. If you have other questions about the services, about vestments, about architecture in the church, I'm still working on my tour of the church. I hope I'll have that up for you all this week. But go ahead and either email me directly, rector@christchurchcooperstown.org, or add them in the comments underneath this video or one of our other videos. Go ahead, fire away. And if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up. I'll try to find a good explanation for you, and I hope that will be helpful and interesting for you. And I want to thank you for participating in these services online, for watching these videos, and for sticking together through this difficult period. God bless you.